Well, hello. This is Talk Tales and Trivia, and my name is Stephanie. How are you today? I'm in a really good mood today. I really am. I don't know why. No, actually, I do know why. I was preparing for a big podcast here, and I was doing some research. And today's topic makes me very happy. It does. It's on Trivial Pursuit. Why are we so interested in trivia? I'm going to give you a little history, and then I'm going to tell you a few other things, and then we'll be done. Let me start with the history first, and then we'll kind of talk about other stuff. Okay, so Trivial Pursuit was created in December of 1979 by two Canadians, Chris Haney and Scott Abbott. Now, in 1979, that was, it was created and they came up with this great concept, and it was released in 1982. And it was a very popular game in 1982 when it was released. And actually in 1984, it actually peaked. And over 20 million Trivial Pursuit games were sold. And that's a lot. So that's really cool. And then in 1994, after it was named to the Games Hall of Fame by Games Magazine, this guy, David Wall, said, wait, hang on a minute. I was hitchhiking through Canada, and Chris Haney picked me up, and I explained the whole game to him. I went through the whole concept. And this is David Wall saying, I went through the whole concept with him. I was like talking, doing this kind of thing, and telling him about all the pieces. And then he said, that's interesting. Get out of my car. And then look at this. He stole my concept. He stole my idea. So in 1994, he went to court, and he kind of was like, this guy stole my idea. It was my idea, my game. I deserved the money, the proceeds from it. And Chris Haney said he never met David Wall. He said, who's this person? I never even saw this person before my whole life. And so David Wall didn't win the lawsuit. I think it's interesting how people come out of the woodwork when money's involved. It shouldn't have to be that way. But that's what happened. And David Wall, not surprisingly, but I don't believe in coincidences, but he actually did the lawsuit after it was named in the Games Hall of Fame by Games Magazine. So I guess perhaps he read it in Games Magazine, and then he got really mad. Old Trivial Pursuit games have a way of making their way into old rooms and lobbies of beachside motels and old historic inns across the country, left there by guests, or the establishment owners would go to a tag sale and get a Trivial Pursuit game and put it in their lobby of their hotel, or beachside motel. They'd have a game room, and it would have like a deck of cards, air hockey, and a Trivial Pursuit game. Remember those times? That was a good time. If you're at a beachside motel, which I was for a while, I went to Fire Island and I went to Montauk, and if it rained and you couldn't go to the beach, you were stuck in that motel room. You were like packed in, and you didn't have anything to do. So that's when Trivial Pursuit was good to have, because you were completely like immobile. You had nothing to do. A lot of these hotels and motels and beachside places didn't even have TV back then. So, you were really stuck, and it could have been depressing if it weren't for these games that they had. Board games and as a whole were very popular. But this is, how it was back then. I'm just telling you how it was. And if you're a certain age, you don't believe it, but you either played board games or you were bored. So anyway, we played Trivial Pursuit, and I think it was a passing phase, but it reminds me of a time when there was less stress and MTV was doing their thing. It came out around the same time. It reminds me a little interesting story that MTV, I didn't have cable when I was growing up. I only had 2 through 13. Now, a lot of people don't remember when we didn't have cable, but we didn't have cable, and I had moved out of my house and was living on my own in New York City, and I got cable before my parents did. But at the time, when we didn't have cable, we played Trivial Pursuit, and we played Mastermind, and I was learning how to play chess, but I wasn't good at that. So that was our thing. So it has like kind of a cozy connotation to it. I'm big into like having an excuse to stay in. Like if it's sunny out, it's like I feel guilty because I'm not outside. And if it's raining out or if it's snowing, That's even better. I know I've said that before, but that's even better. So if it's raining or snowing, then what are you going to do? You're going to, play board games and do that kind of thing. Nowadays, people would get on there if they were snowed in, or if it was like raining or something, and kids didn't have anywhere to go today, they would not be that bad off. They'd have the Facebook and the social media, they'd have their phones, they'd have apps, they'd have stuff to do. But back then we really had nothing to do. We were bored. And Trivial Pursuit was one of those things that was really cool. And what I would do is I would go over to my friend's house that had cable, and we'd watch MTV, and we'd get our diet sodas, and then we'd get our Fritos, and we would watch MTV and play Trivial Pursuit and maybe Twister, but I wasn't good at Twister. Trivial Pursuit, and we would have a great time. And then I'd go home and go to sleep. And that was great. Trivial Pursuit is actually good because it taught me a lot about history. And I think if you asked somebody below a certain age, who the president was in 1945, I don't really think that they would know. I don't think they'd know it was Roosevelt. I really don't. But I learned a lot about history from Trivial Pursuit. So I do owe Chris Haney and Scott Abbott a thank you, a shout out, if you will, for making that game. A long gone era, sitting around, no cell phone interruptions. You had a living room and den, and you had this emotion that you were cozy in with your family, and seeing like a game night kind of thing. It was kind of nice. And now it really has, the social media has taken over that whole thing. And the social media, Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat, that's big. And back then, we didn't have any of that. So, back then there was no preset description of how you should be or what makes you, popular. There was none of that. So we had this love of board games, and Trivial Pursuit was certainly one of those things, and drew the family together and created great memories. I really want to stress this. The memories that I have of Trivial Pursuit is not actually playing the game. I don't remember asking the questions or anything, or answering the questions. I more or less equate it with the emotions of having a great time. That was a fun time. That really made me happy, that kind of thing. Maybe that's why I was so happy, because I was thinking about what a great time I had when I was a kid. It wasn't like I took my whole childhood, and it was like these little pieces of my childhood that had I remember just smiling and having a great time. And that was part of it. But, trivia is kind of interesting, because even if you don't like Trivial Pursuit, you can still love trivia. And I'll be more than happy if anyone uses any of this stuff for trivia. That's fine. But trivia is kind of cool, because it's if you ever have a big chunk of airspace, and we call it airspace, a big chunk of time that lapses between a conversation, you can always pull out your trivia card. Well, you wouldn't pull it out, but you have it in your head. Or a dinner at the family dinner table, if you didn't want to tell your mom and dad about a bad report card. Yeah, trivia would come in handy then. And, it's really kind of interesting. It became a museum piece, a fond reminder of carefree times in the 1980s. I really think that that's the whole thing. Anyway, so that's where I'm at with Trivial Pursuit and board games in general. And that's how I feel. And, if you have any questions, or if you have anything to add to this Trivial Pursuit situation here where I'm talking about it, I'd love to hear either if you have played Trivial Pursuit, if you have a Trivial Pursuit game, if you played any of the next editions. In other words, there were Baby Boomer, Millennial. I think there was a movie edition. There were a couple of editions, but I'm interested in knowing if you played Trivial Pursuit when you were young, if you still have Trivial Pursuit in your game repertoire, or if you got rid of it, how you got rid of it, if you've seen Trivial Pursuit out there and somewhere on your travels. Love to know. And as you know, I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can always email me at talktalesandtrivia@gmail.com. And that's it for today. I hope that I've given you something to think about here with Trivial Pursuit. It's how you felt. It's the emotion you felt while you were playing the game. It brings back a cozy feeling for me. I'd love to know how you feel. Okay, thank you so much. That's it for now.